بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على عبده ورسوله نبينا وإمامنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. We all know that the human being is limited. The human being is flawed. The human being at his or her best, his ability, whether that's physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, is always kept at best. That is when you're at best, let alone when you're at your worst, or where things are average or mediocre. So no matter what we strive and attempt to do, something is going to be inshallah. So with that being said, as was mentioned by my brother, may Allah bless him and increase him in good, the time is late. However, my personal comfort or my personal enjoyment or pleasure or how I'm feeling, etc. And I'm not saying this to stand in front of you to look like I'm someone pious or righteous or something that I'm not, better than what I actually am, but it is the reality is that my comfort is not what's important. What's important is that we've come here for a purpose, and inshallah ta'ala we're going to treat it as such. With regards to the talk, with regards to questions, with regards to answers, we're going to do the best that we can. How I'm feeling and what time it is, it doesn't matter. Alhamdulillah, if we want to sleep and rest, we'll be in the United States. And I remember once we were in Guyana, and it was the first talk that we did of the tour. And our brothers were asking questions, people were benefiting. It was after Salat al-Isha, and it was in the summertime as well, it was late. So our brother, he said, the Sheikh's tired, the Sheikh has to rest, the Sheikh needs to get some sleep. So one of the young Guyanese brothers, he said there, he says the Sheikh can rest in the Qabristan. He said the Sheikh can rest in the grave. Meaning, he didn't come to Guyana to sit back and, drink coconut water. We came to Guyana for a purpose. And the same applies to coming to the United Kingdom. We came here for a purpose, walillahi alhamd. And I humbly believe, and Allah surely knows best, is that we've tried our best to fulfill that purpose. Of course there are bumps in the road. Of course there are challenges. Of course there are obstacles. Of course there are many, many, many things behind the scenes. Wallahu ghalibun ala amrihi. But Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who's going to He's going to be in control no matter what. Allah is going to win. And those on the side of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will win, even if the people will try to stop that. And we ask Allah to make us of those who win. And to make us of those who are on the side of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger and the side of the believers. Ameen. So with that being said, inshallah ta'ala, we'll give you some words of wisdom. It's something that I wanted to read to you, something which is very profound and beneficial for myself. And I don't feel that I would be a good brother and an honest Muslim if I didn't share those words with you. Okay? Because the Prophet tells us that you can't be a believer until you love for your brother that which you love for yourself. If the brothers have any comments afterwards, or if you have any questions on the topic or after or off of the topic, then I'm willing to sit here. It doesn't matter to me. B'idhnillahi ta'ala. We came here for a purpose, so don't worry, inshallah. Don't worry. Khayr, inshallah. Last time I came to the United Kingdom, I did a khutbah. Just like I did a khutbah this time, but last time I think I was at Green Lane Mosque, or Green Lane Masjid. And I did a khutbah on a topic that I feel is very widespread. a topic that I feel is something that most of us suffer from. A topic that I feel all of us have been affected by and from on one level or another. And a topic that a wise man who wasn't a Muslim said, out of all character defects and flaws, and all of the problems that people have in their minds and in their hearts and their souls, is one of them that they will never ever acknowledge, and they'll never admit to, and they'll never suck up to. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Also, last but not least, the last thing I'll say before I read these beautiful words is the concept of one of the reasons why we have so many fights and disagreements and arguments. One of the reasons why we are in the situation that we're in with regards to masjids and centers and imams and sense of knowledge and scholars. قال أبو العباس رحمه الله تعالى إن الحسد مرض من أمراض النفس وهو مرض غالب فلا يخلص منه إلا قليل من الناس ولهذا يقال ما خلا جسد من حسد لكن اللئيم يبديه والكريم يخفيه وقد قيل للحسن البصري أيحسد المؤمن فقال ما أنساك إخوة يوسف إلا أولاء أبا لك ولكن عمه في صدرك فإنه لا يضرك ما لم تعديه يدا أو لسانا فمن وجد في نفسه حسدا لغيره فعليه أن يستعمل معه التقوى والصبر فيكره ذلك من نفسه. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy upon him, was one of the most influential Islamic figures in the annals of history and one of the most talented human beings known to the world. He was a person that was so talented, so skilled, so knowledgeable, and so learned that whenever he spoke about a subject or talked about something, the onlookers, the audience, the people in the crowd, they thought that that was the only thing that he had ever studied in his life. That's the only thing that he knows is what he's talking about right now because of his utter mastery of that subject. Just stop and think about this now. For someone to be so good at a thing that you say it's impossible for this man to have time to do and study and review anything else. And in most cases, when he talked about that thing, it wasn't even his field of expertise, or it wasn't his favorite thing to do, or his favorite subject to discuss. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah was known to each and every one of you. I don't have to give you a lecture about Shaykh al-Islam. When he would debate with people, and people lied on him, and people went to the ruler, they went to the sultan, and he said he's this, and he said he's that. He says Allah is like this, and Allah is like that, and they lied on him. All right? They made up things about Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. He would say to the ruler, and the thing which would equalize the playing field, because there were more people than him, and they had political influence and political power. And he would say to the ruler, he said, this is what I believe with regards to Allah's names and attributes. This is what I believe with regards to visiting the graves. This is what I believe with regards to swearing by Allah, etc. The points of difference between me and between them. And he would say to the ruler, this was his key weapon, he would say, فَكُلُّ مَنْ خَالَفَنِي فَأَنَا أَعْلَمُ بِمَذْهَبِهِ مِنْهُمْ. He says, all of these people who run against me, I know their madhab is better than they do. All of the people who have problems with me, whether they're lying or whether I'm telling the truth, whatever, I know what Shafi'i said more than they do. And they claim to be Shafi'i scholars. And I know the text of Imam Malik more than those who are Maliki scholars do. And it takes a lot to make a statement like that. That's a bold claim. That's a bold claim. And we know one of the most effective ways of using a ruse when you're fighting someone is a bluff. A well-timed bluff. I dare you to do it. And in most cases, the person is scared, or if they flinch, or they're a little hesitant, or they're a little timid, the bluff will work. But oftentimes, the bluff doesn't work. And you find yourself in a world of trouble if they say, all right, let's go. You find yourself in a world of trouble. So to make a bluff proves a certain amount of courage. To make a bluff and to stand to that bluff and say, I know what you're supposed to be on more than you do. That's to prove a great deal of confidence. And we know that can't come from unless you have a great deal of talent and skill, and you've devoted a large part of your life to reading and studying. That was Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, who felt that he was invincible. He claimed that he was invincible. You may say, what do you mean? When did he say that he was invincible? He said that famous statement, ماذا يصنع بي أعدائي? He says, what can my enemies do to me? What can they do to me? If they lock me up, if they kill me, if they arrest me, if they do this to me, he says, how can they beat me? If they put me in prison, then I get a break from teaching people. And I can make the dhikr and the salah and the ibadah that I want to make. He says, if they take my life, then I'll be a martyr. If they remove me from Syria or from Egypt, he says, then I get a vacation. They can't win. It takes a great deal of skill and talent and confidence to make statements like that. So Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala was one of the greatest scholars about Islam, if not the greatest scholar about Islam. So Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah is one of my favorite authors, even though I'm a bit more biased, and I lean more towards Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah. Those who watch our lessons and our videos, they know how often we quote Ibn al-Qayyim, how often we read from the works of Ibn al-Qayyim, but it doesn't mean that we don't have a very, very, very strong love and fondness for Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, his teacher. And before I read these words, there's only a few words. There's a very interesting story with regards to Ibn Taymiyyah and with regards to Ibn al-Qayyim, how they met, what Ibn al-Qayyim used to be before he met Ibn Taymiyyah, how Ibn Taymiyyah was patient with Ibn al-Qayyim, and how he sat with him and discussed things with him, and how he allowed Ibn al-Qayyim to bring everything that he had and to stand on his position until Allah Azza wa Jalla guided Ibn al-Qayyim to the correct sunnah. Very interesting story, I'm not going to tell you. If you get a chance, read how Ibn al-Qayyim and Ibn Taymiyyah met up, and what Ibn al-Qayyim was before he met Ibn Taymiyyah, and what he became afterwards. And read about the hardships and the difficulties and the struggles that they both went through. And anyone who reads their books is forced to respect them. You may not agree with them, but you're going to respect them. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, I would say, is a scholastic bully. A scholastic bully. When you read his position, he's going to bombard you with his proofs, with his evidences, with his intellectual reasoning, so much so that you'll doubt yourself on the issue that you're reading in his book. Read Tahdhib as-Sunan, simple example of this, of talaq al-bid'ah. Can you divorce a woman who's menstruating? Or divorce a woman who you just had intercourse with? What is the ruling on talaq al-bid'ah? When you study the books of fiqh, you find 99% of the ulama of Islam all saying that talaq al-bid'ah yaqa. Even though it's haram and it's impermissible, it's counted as a divorce. It is counted as a divorce. And you'll be, as they say, hard-pressed to find an alim who said that it doesn't count. But Ibn Taymiyyah, and especially Ibn al-Qayyim, when you read their argument, there lies no doubt. If you're not firm on your view and your position, you only may come across a few pages before you may say, whoa, wait a second. This is a little dangerous now. So Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, in his book Tahdhib as-Sunan, he discusses the issue of talaq al-bid'ah for Allahu alam how many pages in depth like no other alim. And he used the knowledge that Allah gave him, and he used it in a very powerful way. So before I read these words, my personal advice is for any student of knowledge or any layman Muslim who wants the highest of the high, the most pure version of ilm, is to read the books of those two scholars. Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn al-Qayyim, whether it's in English, and even, whether it's in Arabic and even in English. So Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he speaks about this problem that we all suffer from, that we've been affected by. There's a main reason behind all of the bickering and the fighting in the United Kingdom and outside of the United Kingdom. He said that hasad, whether you translate it to be envy or jealousy, maradun min amrad al-nafs. He says it's a disease and it's an illness of the soul. It's a disease and an illness of the soul to have hasad. وَهُوَ مَرَضٌ غَالِبٌ. And it's something that most people suffer from. It's a disease which isn't rare or unique. It's not a disease of old people. It's a disease that most people have. فَلَا يَخْلُصُ مِنْهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ. Only a few men can actually say that they have no hasad whatsoever. Most people, they have it, according to Ibn Taymiyyah. وَلِهَذَا يُقَالُ. And for this reason, it was said, people used to say, مَا خَلَى جَسَدٌ مِنْ حَسَدٍ. Nobody is free from hasad, from envy and from jealousy. No. لَكِنَّ الْإِمْ يُبْدِهِ. But the wretch, the low person, the base person, The man who isn't noble, who isn't enlightened, yubdihi, he manifests his hasad through his statements, through his actions, through his akhlaq, through his facial expressions. He can't hide it because he isn't noble. He's not enlightened. He's too low to stifle it and to suppress it. وَالْكَرِيمُ يُخْفِيهِ, and the noble man, the enlightened one, the high one, he yukhfihi, he hides it and he stifles it. He doesn't allow it to be spewed out. وَقَدْ قِيلَ لِلْحَسَنِ الْبَصْرِي, Hasan al-Basri, he was asked once, أَيَحْسُدُ الْمُؤْمِنِ, can a believer have hasad? Is it possible for there to be one who is a mu'min to have hasad? مَا أَنْسَاكَ إِخْوَةُ يُوسُف لَا أَبًا لَكَ. He says, haven't you read the story of Yusuf and his brothers? May you have no father. He says, may you have no father. Did you not read the Quran al-Kareem? And his brothers, they all had what? They had hasad and they were believers. Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he then quotes Hasan al-Basri by saying, وَلَكِنْ عَمِّهِ فِي صَدْرِكَ. He says, stuff it and lock it up in your chest. Don't let it come out. Don't let it be manifested. فَإِنَّهُ لَا يَضُرُّكَ مَا لَمْ تُعَدِّهِ يَدًا وَلِسَانًا. He says, because you won't be taken into account, you won't be punished, nothing will happen to you as long as it doesn't extend to your hand or your tongue. As long as you don't speak about it or do something physically with your hands. Shaykh al-Islam rahimahullah, he says, فَمَنْ وَجَدَ فِي نَفْسِهِ حَسَدًا لِغَيْرِهِ فَعَلَيْهِ أَنْ يَسْتَعْمِلَ مَعَهُ التَّقْوَى وَالصَّبْرِ فَيَكْرَهُ ذَلِكَ مِنْ نَفْسِهِ. He says, whoever finds himself to be jealous or envious, which is natural, it can happen. It's not something which is impossible. It's not something which is far-fetched. He says, then he has to cure this hasad and fight this hasad and extinguish this hasad with taqwa and with sabr. And he has to hate that thing. He cannot allow that thing to dominate himself. He cannot allow that thing to come out in his statements, in his actions, his facial expressions, and also in his scholarship. You cannot say things and determine things and come to conclusions, come to reservations, have opinions, make statements about people that is based off of hasad. So last year in the Green Lane Mosque, I did this khutbah, not with this speech, but I surrounded this my khutbah around the hadith of Abdullah bin Mas'ud in the Sahihain, in which the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he said, لا حسد إلا في اثنتين. He says there's no hasad. There's not to be no hasad except for one or two circumstances. And he mentioned from these two circumstances, رَجُلٌ آتَاهُ اللَّهُ الْحِكْمَةِ, is that a man whom Allah gives wisdom. He has knowledge. He's learned. And another version, آتَاهُ اللَّهُ الْقُرْآنِ, he's learning of the Quran. And he teaches the people his wisdom. فَهُوَ يَقْضِي بِهَا وَيُعَلِّمُهَا. He makes judgment based off of wisdom, and he teaches people wisdom. And the second person whom you are allowed to have hasad for is رَجُلٌ آتَاهُ اللَّهُ مَالًا فَصَلَّتَهُ عَلَى هَلَكَتِهِ فِي الْحَقِّ. أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Is a man whom Allah has made very wealthy. He's given him a lot of money, but he's also made him to be extremely generous. And he spends all of his money in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the only two people whom you are allowed to have hasad against. And we quote it in this khutbah, what the ulama of Islam say what's meant by this hadith. It doesn't mean that you can be nasty to these people and say bad things about them and lie and make controversy. He says no, it doesn't mean that. وَإِنَّمَا الْمَقْصُودُ الْغِبْطَةِ. And al-ghibta means if you say, man, I wish I had what he had. SubhanAllah, it's a beautiful brother. MashaAllah, he's so knowledgeable. He's so this, he's so that. I wish I had what he had. I wish I could do what he did. I wish Allah Azza wa Jalla would bless me similar to what he has blessed me or blessed him with. That is called ghibta. And hasad is when you hate for this brother to have it. Even if you yourself don't want it, or even if you're unworthy or if you're not qualified to do what he does. But I hate it so much, I don't want you to shine. And that is prohibited all of the time. And we quoted Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Muneer mentioning about al-hasad and how it is a disease, and there were many people who had this disease of different religions, let alone the Muslims, and how a scholar and a learned person and a knowledgeable person could be afflicted with this disease. And I read this speech here of Shaykh al-Islam when I was on the airplane, and I said I want to share this with one of the masjids that I go to. And wallahi, when I was on the airplane, I was asking my companion, our brother, our elder, Abu Sa'id, what's the schedule? What talks am I doing in the UK? Well, I didn't know what talks I was doing until I had landed. And he said they're doing all Ramadan talks. And then we spoke to Brother Noor, preparing for Ramadan, maximizing Ramadan, doing this Ramadan, everything around Ramadan, which is a good thing, alhamdulillah. But this is one of the talks that I wanted to do because it was beneficial for myself, and it was also going to be a follow-up of last year of the concept of hasad. And we quoted Shaykh Islam saying that there are some people قد يبتلى بعض المنتسبين إلى العلم بنوع من الحسد. He says some people who are attributed to knowledge and ascribe themselves to ilm, they could be afflicted with hasad. And we quoted the famous, iconic story of Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, who was such a talented young man, he attracted hasad. And many people envied him. And from those who envied him wasn't his peer, wasn't his classmate, wasn't his student, but it was his own teacher. Just stop and think about this now. Your sheikh, your ustad is jealous of you. And not only is he jealous of you, and he has hatred because Allah gave you something that he didn't give him, or took you a year to learn it, it took him 20 years, but he made a campaign against Imam al-Bukhari. And he basically slandered Imam al-Bukhari. And he made a great deal of kalam about Imam al-Bukhari. So much so that they boycotted Imam al-Bukhari. And they thought bad things of him. And they kicked him out of Baghdad. And he went from one place to another, and he did not enjoy the honor of being Imam al-Bukhari, all because of his teacher's envy. And not from لا تسبوا الأموات فإنهم قد أفضوا إلى ما عملوا. Do not curse the dead, because they have done what they have done. Don't curse them. There's no need in cursing them. It's not included in that hadith. Even though Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah mentions in his book Kitab al-Janaiz, Babu Dhikri Shirar al-Mawta. وذكر الآية تبت يدا أبي لهب وتب. Imam al-Bukhari mentions in the book of funerals, mentioning Shirar al-Mawta, the evil from among the dead. And he quoted the first verse from Surah Al-Lahab. Al-Muhim, we're not here to curse any Muslims or speak ill against any Muslims who passed away. But the truth is the truth. And that Imam was Muhammad ibn Yahya al-Dhuhli, rahimahullah ta'ala. Muhammad ibn Yahya al-Dhuhli was one of the most knowledgeable Imams of Hadith. He had mastered ilal al-Hadith al-Zuhri. He was an expert of the ilal of Hadith, the hardest subgenre of the study of Hadith. Yet and still, he interviewed Imam al-Bukhari. And he asked Imam al-Bukhari questions, and he passed on news, and he passed on narrations and statements that Imam al-Bukhari supposedly said, Lafdi bil-Qur'ani makhluq. Supposedly attributed to Imam al-Bukhari that when I recite the Quran, it's created. When I recite the Quran, my recitation of the Quran is created. Is that permissible to say? Is that valid? Is that correct to say? Is the Quran created? We know it's not. Are the deeds of the slaves created? We know they are. There's no doubt about that. The Kalam of Allah is not created. The actions of the slaves, including what they recite and how they recite, is created. So he who answers that question is stuck between a rock and a hard place. If you say, Lafdi bil Qur'ani makhluq, when I recite the Quran, it's created, someone may understand that you're saying that the Quran is what? Created. And if you say, Lafdi bil Qur'ani laysa bi makhluq, that's not created, one may say, you're denying the fact that the acts of the slaves are created. So it was a slippery slope, a troublesome issue. And they attached to Imam al-Bukhari, and they boycotted him, and they disrespected him. So much so that the pupil at the time and the friend of Imam al-Bukhari was Imam Muslim. Imam Muslim, he told Imam al-Dhuhli, he gave him all of his hadiths, which were more valuable than solid gold. To have a sanad ali of this great Imam, he says, take all of your narrations. As long as you're against my friend and my teacher Bukhari, I don't want them anymore. And we know what happened to Imam al-Bukhari. Al-Dhahabi rahimahullah, he mentions the story in Siyar Alam al-Nubala in its full version. And it's one of the most beneficial stories for the student of knowledge in 2019. To realize what I just read to you is that it is a maradun min amrad al-nafs wa huwa maradun ghalibun fala yakhlusu minhu illa qalilun min al-nas. What Ibn Taymiyyah just said is that it is a disease of the soul, and it is something which is most people suffer from, and only a few people are free from it. Even those who have knowledge, those who are righteous, and those who have a great deal of ilm, they can be attributed or afflicted by what? By hasad. And what happens when you have hasad? It clouds your judgment. You can't see properly. And you start interpreting things the way you want to interpret them. You start looking at things the way you want to look at them, or I start looking for things that I have no business looking for, and it's dangerous. So this is the khutbah that I did last year, and obviously it was a strategic khutbah. I did it for a purpose and for a reason. I did it for myself first and foremost. And I did it for one of the things that I saw was one of the main ingredients of this stew of fitna in the United Kingdom and in the United States and wherever you go. I don't think there's a country in which there are Muslims, in which there are students of knowledge, except that they have this fitna. And that is of the student talking about the teacher. That is of the friend now stabbing his friend in the back. That is of the masjids, instead of working together, cooperating, helping each other out, trying to settle the differences with ilm, with respect, with sabr, they do the exact opposite. And oftentimes, it's based off of hasad. The only reason why I looked for your mistakes is because I envied you. The only reason why I didn't make an excuse for you is because I envy you. The only reason why, and then this goes on, of the problems of the soul, that we ask Allah to purify our souls. So with that being said, Hassan al-Basri rahimahullah, when he was asked, or before that part, Shaykh Sami says, there are two types of men in the world. There's the Kareem, and then there's the La'im. There is the one who's noble, and then there's the one who is base and mean. So both of them could be afflicted with hasad. It can happen. But he stifles it. And this is an extremely important Islamic concept of fighting yourself and stifling certain feelings, thoughts, and emotions. And we live in a time in which people call themselves liberal or progressive or modern Muslims, and they don't understand this concept. A perfect example of this is the concept of a homosexual in Islam. Can a Muslim be a homosexual? Can a homosexual be a Muslim? Someone who's a lesbian, someone who is gay, someone who's queer, etc. What is the ruling on that in our Islam? It's a huge amount of controversy in the world today with regards to LGBTQ, etc. And the Muslims are not free from it. You can get on the television, you can go on YouTube, you can go on CNN or BBC or whatever, you can find someone who's a gay man. And he's openly gay. I'm a Muslim, I pray, I lead the people in the prayer, and I'm a homosexual. And there's no proof in the Quran or the Sunnah to prove that it's impermissible for me to be a homosexual. You can find someone saying that. And then you can find someone who says, if you're gay, you're no longer a Muslim. You're a kafir just by being a homosexual. Like what happened to us the other night. We were asked the question, can a Muslim be a homosexual? And we answered the question, is that homosexuality in Islam, according to the Quran and the Sunnah, is a major sin, an abomination. Min al-kaba'ir, al-muhlikat. There's no doubt about that. It's a major sin. It's a grave sin. But what proof do we have to say this person isn't a Muslim and that they're a kafir and they're a murtad? Do you have the dalil to state that? If a person says it's permissible to be homosexual, there's nothing against it, so on and so on, that's different. We're not talking about al-mustahil. We're talking about the one who ya'tarif. He acknowledges the fact that it's wrong. He says, I know I'm wrong, it's messed up, but I was taken advantage of, or whatever the case may be. May Allah help me, I'm still a Muslim. So we answered the question, that's what we said. And after we did the lecture, a brother, he pulled me to the side, he said, Shaykh, he says, you were too soft on the homosexual question. He said, you were too soft. You were supposed to, be harder on that. So what was I supposed to say? That he is a kafir? I have to have a proof for that. Am I qualified for that? What dalil do you have to say that someone is a murtad just because they're homosexual? Is it haram? We're not different on that. Is it a major sin? Is it something which is against Islam? No one is different on that. But to say he isn't a Muslim, you have to have a dalil for that. So you have people who are on both sides of extremism. Both sides of extremism. What's the point that I'm trying to get to? Abdullah ibn Abbas narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, لعن الله المتشبهين من الرجال بالنساء ولعن المتشبهات من النساء بالرجال. In Sahih Bukhari, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, Allah curses men who imitate women, and He curses women who imitate men. لعن المتشبهين من الرجال بالنساء. Men who mutashabbih. Listen, he didn't say mushbihin, mushabihin. He says mutashabbihin. And anyone who understands the Arabic language, he knows what that wasn't means. Tafa'ala. Mutashabbih. He who tries to imitate a woman is cursed. And a woman who tries to imitate a man is cursed. These are the words of the Messenger of Allah. This hadith by itself clearly proves the impermissibility and the rule of being a homosexual in Islam. If you can't even imitate the opposite sex. So many people, they have a problem with this, and they say, well, what is the sin of the person who's born feminine? What is the sin of the woman who's naturally a tomboy? She's naturally a tomboy. A man, a woman, they have children. They have 4 girls. 3 of them are feminine, they're dainty, and one of them is naturally a tomboy. She fights with her brothers, she's athletic, she wears this type of clothes, that's how she is. She's not homosexual. What's her sin? The people that don't understand this Islamic principle of stifling, as we just said, عَمِّهِ فِي صَدْرِكَ يُخْفِيهِ. Hafiz bin Hajar rahimahullah explains this hadith by saying, is that if there's a person who's mukhannith, who's feminine, he's not necessarily cursed. And he's not necessarily a sinner. And he's not necessarily bad. Unless he doesn't attempt to change and fight himself and stifle it and to suppress it. And he has to yatakallaf. He has to act like a man, even though that's not his normal character. And a woman who's masculine is upon her to make herself dainty and ladylike, even though that's not from her normal character. And the same applies to hasad. Hasad, you may have it in your heart, but you can't speak it. You can't say it. You can't act upon it. You have to ask Allah to remove it from your heart, and you have to try your best to shake his hand, to smile on his face, to give him a hug. Barakallahu lak. May Allah bless you. Allah, there are many brothers like this. There are many brothers like this. They'll try. They try their best to, accept it and not to spew venom on the next person. So that's what Shaykh Islam he means, is that noble people hide it, noble people fight it, and people who aren't noble, people who are low and close to the ground, they have no shyness. And they have no problem talking about someone, or speaking about someone, or making a fitna, or making a controversy just based off of hasad. Imam Bukhari, he never said that. The aqeedah of Imam Bukhari was crystal clear. The repute and the status of Imam Bukhari was known. And the only reason why he said those words and made that controversy is because he was jealous. So if that's Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muhammad Ibn al-Dhuhli, then what do you think about me and you? What do you think about people who would never get to the status of Imam al-Bukhari? People who didn't pray as much as he prayed, who didn't fast as much as he fasted, who didn't sacrifice 1/10 of what Imam al-Bukhari sacrificed. How much hasad do you think we're going to be afflicted by? And which a person is above someone else, beyond someone else, has a talent that a person doesn't have, of wealth, of beauty, of strength, etc. How much hasad do you think is going to be what? On the table. And the first thing that a person who has hasad says, I'm not jealous. Why would I be jealous? I have no hasad. La. We have no envy against the brother. If you didn't have any hasad, why would you even have to say that? My criticism is for the sake of Allah. These are my points. This is the proof. This is the evidence. This is what you said in this book and in this lecture. Not what Flair narrated. And not what I heard. No, this is your nas. This is your kalam right here. And this is the proof against it from Quran, Sunnah, and Ijma'. And if it's an issue of ijtihad, then this is my opinion, and I feel that you're wrong. I know it's khilaf, but I still feel that you've made a mistake. And you can make inkar in some masail of ijtihad and ikhtilaf. Some masail, even though it's ikhtilaf, you can say, I feel akhta'ta. And this is the proof that you made a mistake with ihtiram. So with that being said, it doesn't matter what you have in your heart. This is the criticism that I have for you from the Quran, from the Sunnah, and from the Ijma'. Class. You accept it not, you like it, it matters not to me. But the moment you say, I'm not trying to hate, I'm not hating on them, I don't want you to think I'm hating on them, the moment you say those words, you've already shot yourself in the foot. And you're showing that in most cases, the only reason why you're criticizing them is because of hasad. But that doesn't mean that the criticism is wrong. And that's the next extreme. It doesn't mean that the criticism is wrong. The criticism may be right, even though it was only given because of hasad. So both people have a responsibility. The criticizer has a responsibility of fearing Allah, of being sincere, seeking the face of Allah, having the proper knowledge, and knowing his place. Rahimallahu rajulan arafa qadra nafsihi. The Salaf, they would say, Allah have mercy upon someone who knows his place. So we say, know your place, even if you are right. And this person doesn't need advice. Where do you come into this mix? What do you have to do with this situation? Know your place. And this advice is also for me as well. So that's what's meant by Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah's words. And then we have the statement of Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah, which is similar to the story of Imam al-Bukhari, is that a believer could have hasad. And then there were people who didn't realize this reality, and that's why they asked Hasan al-Basri, Ayahsadu al-mu'min? Can a mu'min have hasad? And he says, Ma ansaka. He says, what has caused you to forget the story of Yusuf? May you have no father. Meaning, what a stupid question. What a dumb question. What do you mean, can a believer have hasad? Have you not read the Quran? That was the answer of Hassan al-Basri rahimahullah. Last but not least, he says, Ammihi fi sadrika. Keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself. Try to get a cure. Try to conquer that hasad with taqwa, with sabr, with dua, with self-control. As far as manifesting it and spitting it upon people and throwing it and hurling it, then that's obviously a major problem for yourself. And that's a major problem for Islam. And that's a major problem for the Muslims. And there is no doubt the most harmful thing today for the da'wah towards the sunnah are the people who attribute themselves to the sunnah. And they are far from the sunnah, like the wolf was from Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. The wolf never bit Yusuf. The wolf did not sink his teeth into the flesh of Yusuf. There was no blood on the tongue of that wolf. The people who say that they're upon the way of the Salaf al-Salih, Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Ahlul Hadith, Ashab al-Hadith, when we sit down, you listen to them, you speak with them, you see where they study, their qualifications, and the list goes on, you find them far from the true organic way of Ahlul Hadith that we ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to make us upon. And I'm not speaking about no one specifically. I'm not talking about no one specifically. It's general advice for myself and for others. So with that being said, we ask Allah to remove hasad from our hearts. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to give us sincerity, ikhlas, for His face and for nothing else. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to give us beneficial knowledge and increase us in righteous action and make us patient upon the harms and the difficulties that we experience in the path of da'wah. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. If any of the mashaykh would like to comment or add, wallahi, the floor is more than open. And if not, perhaps we'll take a few questions. Those who want to leave, you can leave. I know it's late. It's been a very long day for us. If you want to go, la haraj. No one's going to look at you funny. No one's going to be upset. No one's going to feel disrespected. It's not a problem. If you want to stay and ask questions or benefit, whatever, then marhaba. Jazakumullah khair.